Hey, folks, thanks for joining me for this episode from the EmbellishPod, an opportunity for me to ramble about whiskey or something for a few moments. If you got here by chance, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button. Hopefully, I can be found on any podcasting platform that exists. And if you can't find me on a platform, send me an email at embellishpod@gmail.com, and I'll get that taken care of. You can also find video versions of this podcast on YouTube. You can find all of my links on Instagram at EmbellishPod or TikTok with the same handle. I have a website. It is www.embellishpod.com. It's a place to pick up these links, episode details, and more. Today, we're going to have a very interesting conversation with a Scotch company, which is relatively new for me as a whiskey consumer, but I think you're going to enjoy what they have to say. All right, it should have told you that we have started recording. Mm-hmm. Welcome, everyone. So this morning, afternoon, whatever time that you happen to be watching this or listening to this, I have Iain and Elliot joining me from Smokehead. I'll give Iain a second to introduce himself and kind of tell us about Smokehead, and then Elliot, I'll let you go and we'll talk about your glassware.
Cool. Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. Well, I'm brand director for Smokehead Whisky. It's Smokehead's an Islay single malt, and first and foremost, Smokehead's an award-winning Islay single malt. So be in no doubt, it's great whiskey. It's smoky, it's peaty, it's phenolic, it's everything that you would expect from an Islay whiskey. But it's very much thereafter orientated around the consumer, around who we call the smokehead, hence the name of the brand, because we see a smokehead as somebody who really loves smoky, peaty, Islay whiskey. But we see those people really as very much attitude driven. You know, they're original thinkers, people that think differently, do what they love, don't worry about what others think. And our brand very much reflects our audience and reflects that attitude. So we're all about intelligent rebellion. We're all about brilliantly rebellious. We're all about turning tradition on its head and doing things a bit differently, and hopefully opening up whiskey to a much wider and, in many instances, younger audience.
So you're brilliantly rebellious, and as a part of what you guys have been doing here recently, that's where Elliot comes into play, right? And I think you guys are continually, you reuse this phrase, rethink drinking, and that goes all the way, it goes from the whiskey all the way down to the vessel that you consume it from. And so, Elliot, if you'll give us just a little quick elevator speech on Elliot's role here.
Yeah, sure. Well, my name is Elliot Walker. I'm a glass sculptor. I'm working in the Midlands of the UK. And, you know, I don't like blowing my own trumpet either, but like award-winning, I am as well. Yeah. I recently won a Netflix series called Blown Away, which was like the first glass blowing series that anyone had really put out. And then subsequent to that, it's my great pleasure to be approached by Smokehead. I think they saw sort of a connection with their brand in what I was doing, sort of, you know, reimagining tradition and trying to break the mold a little bit. And so it was my pleasure to design this glass with the team at Smokehead, really to try and elevate and enhance the experience of whiskey drinking in a completely different way to how it's been done before. So it was quite a challenge.
Yeah, so you mentioned Blown Away. Tell me about that experience, right? Because that's got to be like, you know, you've gone into a career of glass blowing, and now there's a reality TV show about that, which is you know, the most pop culture thing that could exist, but doing it about glass blowing and sort of that experience.
Well, I think, you know, they followed the same format as everything. A lot of people in the UK were comparing it to the Great British Bake Off, which I know has made its way over to the US as well. You know, I can understand the popularity of these sort of competition shows. Starting to work as an artist and as a glassblower, you never really see that sort of thing as having a competitive element. You know, obviously, you're following your own briefs and sort of, you know, you're working for yourself under your own steam. And to suddenly sort of switch that up and, you know, have you competing against other artists. I mean, I don't think it was an amazing show, a great experience, but I don't think there was the same sort of like infighting and negativity that you get in a lot of other competition shows, because as soon as glassblowers get together, we're all in the same boat. We're all, you know, doing the same sort of struggle, and we all ended up getting on very well. So it didn't have quite the same sort of like drama in that respect, but in terms of the actual process itself, there's no need to manufacture drama when it comes to glass making. Everything that broke, everything that went wrong, that is like a daily occurrence for us anyway, sometimes an hourly occurrence. So the drama in the show came from the material and the making process itself, and I think they did a great job of really showing that off.
Yeah, and it seems maybe the behaviors are very similar between glass blowers and distillers, where there is some degree of competitiveness because you're trying to one up somebody else, but there's also some friendliness that exists because it's not the same as some of those other things. And you did mention the Great British Bake Off. My kids love that show.
Right.
We've watched every episode that exists. So yeah, it has made its way all the way here to rural Kentucky. But let's talk about the smoke mask specifically, right? So this is the glass that has been designed in partnership with Smokehead here. How did this? You said they approached you after the show was over. Like, how did that actually happen? Right.
Well, I mean, how long have we been working on these pieces now? It's been for the majority of last year, hasn't it? Really? Yeah, it's been a really sort of, it's been a smooth process for the most part. But it's quite a complicated thing, and it was quite tricky at the start to actually get the mindset in place. I mean, the idea of rethinking drinking, that was that is the push, that is the idea behind Smokehead's ethos as well. And not being a connoisseur of whiskey myself, I immediately sort of fell into the same sort of tropes as you would normally expect from a whiskey glass. So I wasn't really pushing myself and pushing the design quite enough at the start. So we went through like a number of different sort of prototyping stages, and eventually, the gears were greased, and we came up with in the end like 3 sort of specific designs, which then were put forward to the Smokeheads, to the audience, to actually choose the one that went forward into the final production. Which again, sort of naming the brand after your audience as the Smokeheads, and then giving them the chance to actually have that input was really a great part of the process. The smoke mask itself, I think, was, it was my favorite. I think it was the favorite of the design team as well. So the fact that that was the one chosen in the end was perfect. I mean, it was one of the trickier ones to create as well. So that like added to the challenge for me.
So I imagine, through the creative process, there's 3 that you settled on to kind of put up for the vote. How many design prototypes did you have that kind of culminated into that 3?
Well, I think initially we had about 8. So it was 8 at the start, and all 8 of the first ones I think were rejected. And then it was like which was fair. That's fair, totally fair. I've got quite a lot of them knocking around the studio. I always need drinking glasses because I tend to drop them quite often as well. So after that initial 8, it's sort of it pared down. The smoke mask itself, I think it went through about 4 different iterations on its own. So it had like a longer stem at one point, it had a few extra elements, and then it really got refined. It got distilled into what we have now, and sort of the simplicity in the form, and really getting the message across in one go.
Yeah. So Iain, I'll ask you now, as you're going through this creative process, and dealing with whiskey, you're dealing with some art coming out of the still, then going into a barrel, but you guys are purchasing whiskey that's already been made, and so the creative licensing for the bottle that you put it in is largely dictated by mass-produced glassware. Was this kind of a new thing for you, like getting into this like super creative, let's rethink things from the glassware perspective?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, to be honest, John, just as Elliot was saying, I mean, it just seemed a logical step for the brand. We really are all about rethinking drinking. That's in many ways, that encapsulates Smokehead. So, we've done that with the way that we present Smokehead. We think, that's the way our audience looks at Scotch whiskey. So having done that really with the whiskey itself, the next obvious step was to say, okay, well, why are we taking this rebellious, destructive whiskey and just putting it in a standard whiskey glass or tumbler? Why don't we find something completely different? Why don't we rethink the drinking of Smokehead and whiskey itself? And, Elliot was just the perfect partner for that. You know, we were looking for somebody, you know, an award-winning artist that could really get creative with this brief. And we really wanted him to do something completely different that hadn't been seen before, because that is very much Smokehead. And we wanted as well to sort of split opinion. Smokehead is all about you love it or you hate it. It's a bit like Islay whiskey, smoky, peaty. Some people love it, other people don't. Smokehead is like that as a brand. You know, we don't want to be vanilla. We're always looking to create a response, and we wanted that from Elliot. We wanted him to create something completely different that some people will love. I certainly do. I think it looks great, and I think you know, the experience you get from the glass is incredible. Other people will no doubt go, thanks very much, but I prefer my traditional glass. That's absolutely fine too. But our job, you know, really was to try and be innovative. And Elliot was the perfect partner for that. He really got it. He really got the brand. So it was a privilege and a pleasure working with him.
Oh yeah, thank you. Me too. We had a blast in the studio as well. You know, with some of the visuals that came out of it were just incredible. You know, I got to break the glasses as well as making them, which was probably my favorite part of the process.
It's good fun. It's a lot of fun, I have to say. I mean, we left Elliot to do that though, because an awful lot of work goes into those glasses. So if anybody should break it, it's him. But it's quite a lot of fun on camera when you do.
Right. So when you guys kind of began this process, did you show up, Iain, with a list of attributes you were looking for, or did you just say, hey, we want you to rethink this, now you're on your own, go figure it out yourself?
I wouldn't have got very far with that.
We do like, you know, I mean, we do like sort of, you know, breaking the rules, if you like, rethinking the rule book. So yeah, we certainly gave, you know, hopefully we gave a bit of guidance and a bit of brief to Elliot. You know, we certainly, you know, didn't want to get in the way of his artistry and expertise. So it was, I think, just a meeting of minds.
Yeah.
You know, we sort of guided him in a direction, and then all of a sudden, you know, he just took off, brought back the smoke mask and two others. But I have to say, you know, it was a smoke mask that we loved, and I'm delighted to say we think the same way as our Smokehead audience, because they love the smoke mask too. So yeah, it's exactly what we were looking for, really. Although, you know, we didn't really know what we were looking for, but I think he's nailed it.
That's got to be difficult, Elliot, when somebody says, I want you to make a thing, but I don't know exactly what I'm looking for, and now you've got to fill in the details.
100%. I mean, when you're doing anything like this, it's always a collaborative effort, you know, because you can only receive so much guidance before your mind starts working on its own, but you need that initial input. And for me, with the smoke mask, it was more getting a feel for the brand itself. You know, the smoke mask came out of the brand's sort of vibe more than anything else, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and you've already said this, Elliot, that of the three, you think that this was the right choice, and I think, you know, Iain says the same thing, and but you also said it was the most difficult. So it was there like a portion of you that was like, this is the right one, but also from a production standpoint, I've got to do this over and over again. So maybe the other one wouldn't be so bad.
Yeah, it was a bit like that. I mean, it's, you know, the simplicity of it is quite deceptive. I mean, I say simplicity, it's quite a, you know, it's a bold design. It's quite brash. It is quite in your face, but it has its subtleties to it as well. And because you're dealing with a liquid, you know, the glass is made in an offhand process, so there's no molds, there's no restrictions to the final shape other than the space between your hands and the glass and the tools. So one of the most difficult parts to get right was the slanting rim. I mean, it seems like such a slight shift, but when you're actually cutting with a pair of shears the rim of a molten piece of glass and you're trying to get it at the exact angle you need without any ribbles and lumps and bumps and stuff like that, even after 300, I think I could go into the studio now, try and do another one and still have issues. But it needed that, you know, it needs that subtle element to really bring the design together. So yeah,
I can imagine that, you know, the first version of it that you put up for voting, there's a slight variation once you actually go into production mode. How did you get a lot more efficient as you got closer to the 300, or did they all take the exact same amount of time from beginning to end?
I mean, it's the same when you're making anything with this material. It mostly depends on your state of mind at the time. I guess it's the same with anything. If you're in the wrong sort of mood, then everything just becomes 10 times more difficult. And there were days where we got through, half of the day's work, and we just thought that's got to be it for today. You need to give yourself that option of just saying, right, we're not going to get any better at this now. We just need to call it quits and then start afresh tomorrow. So that happens quite a lot.
So the smoke mask itself, when you're doing the creation of this, right, there's going to be an impact on the sensory experience, right? And so if you're trying to have everybody vote on the 3 prototypes that exist, how do you communicate to the folks that are having to do the vote, since they haven't had the opportunity to have the sensory experience? Like, do you want them to vote just based off the design, or are you trying to give them everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think. Sorry, I'll just for the first bit. I mean, each one of the designs, it had a different. It was actually catering to a different sort of sensory experience itself. We had the smoke chamber, which was like a lidded vessel, and that obviously is going to contain the nose and contain the vapors and stuff like that, and then give you maybe like a tactile response as you reveal the lid or you take the lid off. The other design was the ice chamber, which was actually a sort of cooling device which goes on as a lid as well, and you can sit the ice within the whiskey to chill it without diluting it. So again, that's offering a different experience up. The smoke mask itself, it's all about how it interacts with your face, and this process of bringing it forward and covering the nose and the mouth and trapping all of the the intensity of the whiskey in that way. So I think just by the names and the general sort of concept behind each piece, you could get a feel of how it would be, but obviously you're never going to know exactly what it's like until you get this thing around your face.
Yeah.
So, and Iain, because I think, Elliot, you've said before you weren't a huge whiskey fan. The first time you interacted with the Smokehead itself, as opposed to a history of using tumblers or Glencairns or a host of other types of glasses that exist, did you kind of interact with it and say, this is what it always should have been, or like, is this an innovation, or are you in the? And I'm kind of in the boat where every glass has its occasion, right? So sometimes you want to not think about it, and so maybe just burying your face in the smell of it, you just want to have a drink, right? And so a tumbler makes sense then. But was there like this sense of innate, like, this is it, this is what it's supposed to be?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that was our ultimate intention. Could we really accentuate and innovate the experience around Smokehead? And I think we've done that. We really as well wanted to create a glass that ultimately, people would try it, hopefully with Smokehead, but also say, wow, that's a glass, that I'd want to try other whiskeys in as well, because it's just giving me a bigger sensory experience. So what I loved about it, I loved the look of it. I love the name. I think it really sort of fits the brand and fits our audience. But what I really, really liked about it was the fact that it works. It's practical as well, that it really actually gives you that smoke mask experience, that you really are intensifying the experience both on the palate, but particularly on the nose. And the nose is a lot more sensitive than the palate to the flavors and characteristics of whiskey. Blenders use their nose more than they use their palate, and I really think we've been able to to bring that to the fore with this glass. So you really are getting 110%, I think, when it comes to sensory experience. And that's what we want with Smokehead and with Islay whiskies, because they really are, pretty big, pretty bold. And this glass really, really accentuates that.
And so, Elliot, you've been a glass blower for a very long time, very, very talented artist. And how often are you having to create art that people are going to physically manipulate, as opposed to art that is just from a viewed standpoint? And then maybe even a step further, it's physically manipulate, but then also contain someone else's artwork, right? Because whiskey is artwork in itself. So you have art that's containing art that's meant to be held and consumed, as opposed to maybe some of the things you've done past. Like, was that different for you?
Not really. I mean, my sort of my usual artwork is based in the sort of still life genre. So I've gone through this process over the past sort of like 5 or 6 years of sort of seeing a still life painting and then reinterpreting the composition and the use of light in a 3D form, and then putting that out as a sculpture. So a lot of the elements in the sculptures that I make are based on, if not replicas of tableware and drinkware and barware and things like that, jugs, pitchers, decanters and glasses. The fact that they're not actually physically going to be used doesn't mean that they couldn't physically be used. I mean, I work on a lot of sort of Venetian style gobletware for some of these still life pieces, and they're perfectly functional. So a lot of the artistry for me is inspired by the craft itself. I've trained first and foremost as a craftsperson in the glass field. You have to understand the material to be able to make anything out of it, but then I'm just using it in a different way. I'm using the traditional skills to make something which is a piece of art, a sculpture, rather than a functional work. So in the end, this project fit the bill for me perfectly, because it's a sculptured piece. It has its own form. It's referencing, another object, but it's also a functional piece of glassware as well.
Yeah, and it's the Smokehead's values are around kind of rebelliousness,
exactly,
and it feels like some of your art may revolve around a similar concept, and like taking 2-dimensional still life, converting it into 3-dimensional that could be physically manipulated and interacted with. You could have said no. Like, these guys could have showed up and said, "Hey, do you want to help us do this project?" And you absolutely could have said no. So what was the thing that most brought you into I'd like to cooperate with these folks?
Well, initially it was the logo. I mean, I'm a sucker for a skull. So a golden skull just sort of put itself in my ballpark straight away. But it is about the ethos. It is about disrupting tradition, having respect for tradition, but then having no problem at all with completely flipping it on its head. So I think it sat really nicely with me, and the challenge itself, it was just too good to refuse, really.
And I've had a chance to.
Yeah, don't forget we send you some whiskey as well.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I said I'm not a connoisseur. It doesn't mean I'm not a fan of whiskey, and Islay is one of my favorite flavors. So.
Well, yeah, a connoisseur is just something that maybe somebody calls himself to feel better. We're all whiskey consumers, hopefully, at the end of the day.
Exactly.
And it's obvious. I've had the opportunity to have hand blown glassware in my hand before. There's a guy in the United States that does Glencairn inspired hand blown glassware, and it's nice, but it always feels a little bit fragile, right? And that's one thing that I can say for this particular glass, is that it doesn't feel fragile. I mean, it's glass. Glass will break, but it feels like it's has an appropriate amount of heft to match the design.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was that a part of the consideration, or is it just like you wanted to make it durable?
Well, I mean, it does have to fit with the design. I mean, my sort of feeling a lot of the time about handmade glass is, it's either too delicate or it's way too clunky, and you feel like you're drinking out of a jam jar. So this one finds like a happy medium. I wanted to have like quite a refined feel, and there's delicacy in there as well, with the little zip around the filter of the smoke mask, that little golden zip. So that's a really fine sort of delicate little application of color. But as you say, the whole thing feels quite robust and usable. So yeah.
Yeah, it for sure. And I don't know if either of you were ever into comic books at a younger age, but I was really, really into Batman in the 90s. And that's when they introduced the character Bane. I don't know if you've seen the more recent ones, but the mask, the first thing I saw, I immediately was like, every Batman fan should have this, right? Because the logo already fit it, but the smoke mask is absolutely... I intend to take this to a bunch of meetups this year and just use this as a clout glass, like, because they won't have they likely won't have the same sort of thing. It is absolutely fantastic.
Cool.
So I guess from either one of y'all's perspective, I mean, this is obviously unique compared to other whiskey glasses that people have used in the past. I guess what is maybe either one of your favorite distinctly unique feature about this particular glass?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I thoroughly love the whole thing, but I think it's the little flourishes for me that I really like about it. I love the skull on the front. I love the tapering, as you were saying, Elliot, around the base. So when you actually lift the glass up, it actually does look like a smoke mask. It does look, as you said, like that sort of Batman mask is there. So, for me, it just does it all. But I think it's just those little things, those little extra flourishes that, I think really shows off Elliot's real skill. And that's what I love about the glass. It's artistry, but it's also a brilliant whiskey glass in its own right.
Yeah, that really sort of seals it for me. I mean, I've seen, quite a few of these now knocking around the studio, waiting to be packed, waiting to be finished. And I haven't seen them being used until we've been doing these sort of recent interviews. So for me, when someone picks it up and then it's there on the face, that sort of, that finishes off the whole process for me, seeing it being used and how it looks when it's picked up.
So we've talked about the glass for a while, right? But we haven't talked a lot about what goes into the glass, right? Like the Smokehead whiskey. And Elliot, you said that you're maybe not a connoisseur, but you are a consumer of whiskey, and you do like smoky whiskey. So, when you began this process, I assume that you said they sent you some whiskey bottles. What was the thing that sort of struck you about this particular brand in comparison to other peated smoky whiskeys that you had in the past?
Well, I was really blessed to have a nice big box with I think pretty much all of the variations, all the different finishes, and I. It was my job at that point to get some tasting done, so I really went to town on it. My partner, she's not really a whiskey fan at all, but she hates the Islay. She hates it. I'm not allowed to open a bottle of Lafroig in the house if she's in there, because as soon as I open it up and that smell comes out, she runs a mile. But for me, and it's been mentioned before, like the medicinal quality isn't there in this whiskey at all. It's much more subtle. It's much more sort of bonfire sort of, your clothes after a bonfire where you get that lovely smell for like days afterwards, and it lingers in the air. But it's a much sort of nicer and more sort of varied and subtle experience, I think. And I was actually sampling the whiskey from one of the early prototypes of the smoke mask as well. So that was really nice to sort of get the feel of it straight away.
Mm-hmm. And I'll agree with you. I don't think it's quite as medicinal as some smokes can be. And the bonfire thing is straightforward. We have a wood burning fireplace in our house. It's more decorative, but we use it when it's cold outside. And so for the last few nights, we've been burning one, and it absolutely has a very, very similar note and concept. And I think that you said one of the things you appreciated about the glass was the little extra touches that make it, more artistic. It is something that is definitely rebellious in its nature, but it's artistically beautiful. And it sounds like Elliot saying something very similar, that while you fit into this, you're also being a little bit more artistic. So if you would, Iain, maybe kind of give me what your thoughts are on how maybe the Smokehead whiskey interacts with the smoke mask in a unique way.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I think the points you're making, I'm delighted to hear, because that really sort of sums up Smokehead for us, in the fact that it's not just about smoke and peat. There is a really nice sweetness in there as well. It's really a bit of a roller coaster when it comes to whiskey. There's real complexity in there, and that's what I love about it. And you're right, not necessarily quite as medicinal as maybe certain other Islay whiskies. And for me, the glass just accentuates all those great characteristics. So, the glass really does take you on that roller coaster ride. As far as I'm concerned, you know, you're going to get hit by the smokiness and the peatiness as you put your nose into the glass, and you should do. I mean, it's called Smokehead after all. You know, we want it to do what it says on the bottle, but once you then taste it, you know, you really begin to get that sweetness coming through as well. So, you know, you've got your senses really playing with each other, and very much bringing out what we want from the whiskey itself, which is complexity, a level of depth, a real story. Smokehead is definitely not a one-dimensional whiskey, and I think this glass, you know, really brings out the fact that you know, it's multi-dimensional.
You know, and I think we've talked about this a couple times already. The branding of Smokehead is very intentional in mentioning that it's smoking, and for a person who's not a person who started at Scotch, right? So you've got a lot of folks that they start their whiskey journey at Scotch and they move into bourbon or American single malts or some other thing, and then you have, you know, those of us in Kentucky that start at bourbon and move towards Scotch, and having to look at the bottle and say, okay, is this one going to be peated or not? Because I don't really know, because I'm not familiar with it. If it's a is this a Islay, is this a Highland, is this, you know, I don't know the regions yet, but having it on the label, right? There's nothing more clear about this. Feels like it fits in the vein of the idea of rethink drinking, right? Like you're not sitting behind a storied name that, you know, is been in Scotch for, you know, 200 years or whatever. But the branding feels like it's on the outer edges of pop culture as well at the same time. And maybe I'm off, you know, I look at the branding, I look at the designs, I look at the marketing material, and it very much feels like 1980s punk, right?
Yeah. You're right, John. I mean, to be honest with you, when we originated the brand, you know, ultimately, you know, we visited Islay during the Islay Whiskey Festival a number of years ago now. And we were really taken by the fact that there was we felt a real sort of cult following for smoky Islay whiskies that was really building. It seemed a slightly different audience, really, to the one that you might expect in other whiskey regions. You know, it was an audience looking for something that bit different, which Islay whiskies are. They're completely unique, looking for something that bit bolder, maybe that bit more confident. And that's really where the whole Smokehead concept and idea, therefore, came about, because you know, we really felt, okay, well, let's really meet the needs and the wants, the vision of that audience, both in the whiskey itself, obviously, that's really, really important, the most important thing, but also then in the way we positioned the whiskey, and the way we presented the whiskey. But initially, there was no skull on Smokehead. It's what I love about the fact that the smoking skull now really is Smokehead. That is our logo. I mean, Elliot said, you know, he saw the gold skull, and you know, he fell for the brand, which is great. But initially, it wasn't actually on there. It came about through the fact that the brand really took off in Scandinavia, up in Sweden and Norway and Finland, and it was a lot of the rock and roll fraternity that really liked the brand, and they said, "Oh, why don't you, you know, why don't you produce, you know, sort of classic rock album, sort of limited release of Smokehead?" So we did, and that's obviously where the skull came about. You know, that sort of Guns N' Roses type of feel, and it came out as a limited release, and here you go. It's still here to this day. So you know, it basically really took off. Customers loved it. And what I really like about it is we've always wanted the consumer at the center of this brand. And there you go. The skull is there because of our consumer, because of our customers. We listen to them. We put the skull on there. And, you know, we're one of the few whiskey brands that I'm aware of that we got a number of our Smokeheads tattooed with that skull. So obviously that puts quite a bit of pressure on me if I look to maybe update or change the logo. I got to bear in mind that some of the Smokeheads have got that tattooed. I can get some quite interesting social media feedback on that one.
So just send them a coupon for a free tattoo to get the new logo that you're gonna put on.
Yeah, you could cover people with them.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just a little extra marketing for you, and I really appreciate that sort of integration into music and rock culture. Elliot, do you have anything similar? Like, when you're creating, do you consume music at the same time, or are you just like solely focused on your art?
Yeah, it's you have to be really focused. I mean, especially when we were making these glasses, I couldn't have any disturbances throughout the day at all. You know, every other aspect of my life is full of music, but when we're in the studio, for the most part, it has to be completely sort of hermetically sealed.
Mm-hmm. So I guess when you're sitting down with your smokehead, Elliot, and you're gonna drink some whiskey, what do you listen to? What is your music?
Well, it depends. Again, it like it very much depends on the mood. I mean, it was interesting to hear the origin of the skull because I'm at one point was quite a big fan of like death metal and stuff like that. So there's obviously a bit of that going on in there as well. But I have an appreciation for the classics as well, the classical music, and obviously the artwork that I'm looking at quite a lot is sort of 16th century paintings. So yeah, quite a varied a varied intake.
Oh, that's absolutely perfect. So, Ian, what should I be listening to while I'm drinking Smokehead? If we're coming from a Scandinavian launch that had
Yeah.
a tie-in to rock music, like what should I be listening to?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm probably a bit like Elliot. I mean, I've got a pretty eclectic mix too, but I must admit, if my wife's out the house and my son's got his headphones on, then I might put the hi-fi up, and I've got anything from Guns N' Roses and Led Zeppelin going on, Deep Purple, you name it, and I think that's perfect for Smokehead, in my opinion. I would go with all of those, but there's plenty of music genres that I love that would work with Smokehead, but yeah, a bit of sounds a bit corny, but a bit of smoke on the water, why not?
Yeah.
If it works, it works. There's no corniness to it. You guys still center on the rethink drinking, and we've talked about it a couple times, but was that a part of the original design, or was that something that you came to as well, like the original design of the brand of what you're wanting to do? Does it start from its inception, or does that get molded over time too?
No, for us, the brand very much to this day, and hopefully for forever, is very much built around its purpose, its foundation. The brand came about because, as I said, we really saw an interesting sort of different, rebellious sort of cult following for Islay whiskey, and we really felt we could tap into that attitude. So the rebelliousness around the brand, the attitude around the brand, the rule breaking, very much it was reflected initially in the brand and to this day. And we just work day in, day out really to try and make sure that we're very attuned with our audience. We're very much we see things differently, our audience do the same. They're all about liberating good times. We're all about the same. So, I like to think as a marketeer, really, branding and marketing really is all about putting the customer first. And I really feel the customer really is at the center of Smokehead, always was. And I'd like to think always will be.
Yeah, and so you guys are an Islay whiskey, and I think that you identified something that is quite apparent. There is this there's this cult of Ardbeg that's starting to grow here in the United States, and there's this certain following. Islay doesn't mean just smoke. What does for the uninitiated? What does Islay mean to you or to the whiskey marketplace?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a, as you can tell, a great lover of Islay. First and foremost of Islay itself, phenomenal island, great people. If you get the chance to go, please do. It's just a phenomenal community there. Amazing distilleries. Predominantly, the region, the Islay whiskey is about smoky, peaty, sort of phenolic characteristics. But you're absolutely right. There are some amazing whiskies from Islay as well that are not smoky, they're not peaty. They're just really characterful, really deep, complex whiskies. But I think what I love about the island more than anything else is just that community spirit, and that comes through in the crafting of the whiskey. And there's these distilleries go back hundreds of years, and there's a real pride in in what they're doing on Islay, and quite rightly. And the whole world's really got to see that now and appreciates what Islay whiskies are about and what makes them so unique.
Yeah, and you guys have a lot of things going on within the Smokehead brand. Um, if I'm trying to introduce myself to your brand, of the bottlings that are available, where should I start?
Good question. I mean, I think the obvious place to start would obviously be with the original, with the Smokehead Original, 43%. As we've discussed already, a great whiskey in the fact, you're getting that roller coaster of smokiness, peatiness, but there's a really nice sweetness in there too. So probably a great place to start. But thereafter, I've certainly got a soft spot for our high voltage. 58% volume, so it's quite a bit stronger. Many people are maybe slightly put off by the strength. They think, oh, that's going to be too strong for me, maybe a wee bit too prickly on the nose and on the palate. But actually, I think there's a real smoothness that comes through in that whiskey. It's surprisingly smooth for its strength. And of course, being that bit stronger as well, we love mixing Smokehead. For us, you drink Smokehead the way you enjoy it. If you've paid for it, you deserve to drink it the way you want it. And high voltage in particular works great in a mixed drink, and particularly in a cocktail, because it's got the character to cope with any concoction you want to make in a cocktail. And we love cocktails at Smokehead. As I said, for us, it's just about enjoying the whiskey the way you like it. After high voltage and original, we then, as well as a big part of our brand is innovation. We like to see where we can stretch and where we can push whiskey. So we got some amazing finishes, sherry, rum, which gives that lovely sweetness. Obviously with the rum, got the Caribbean, you've got the tropical fruits coming through. But I think one of my real favorites at the moment is our tequila finish. I don't need to tell you, John, how big tequila is in North America. So when the Scotch Whisky Association gave us the chance to be able to finish in tequila casks, we just jumped in it because it just seemed a perfect partnership for Smokehead. And, anybody who gets the chance to try it, please do. Chewy meringue, it's got sweet oranges coming through it. It's first and foremost whiskey. I mean, it's first and foremost Smokehead, not tequila. But I think if you like the tequila and you like your whiskey, you're just going to love that marriage, that partnership between the two. So I think that's worth trying because, two great liquids in their own right, Scotch whiskey and obviously, tequila.
Yeah. And I'll echo the sentiment coming from, the United States. We regularly have, barrel proof whiskey sitting on the shelf, 120, 125, 130 proof, whatever. The high voltage does not, in my experience, finish like a high proof whiskey normally does. It is very much more subtle than anything else. And Scotch seems to take a tequila finish far better than any American whiskey tequila finish that I've ever had, really, where they finish it in a tequila barrel. I don't know. I think the lighter flavors are more friendly with it, maybe, whereas whiskey in the United States seems to bury the fun parts of tequila and bring forth the terrible parts of tequila, right? The part that you taste the next day when you wake up and you've drank too much tequila already. Maybe neither of you guys have ever experienced that, but that's a thing for me.
Don't worry, I've done that. Yeah, I had a very, very heavy night in tequila once in Poland, and then got a 6:30 flight. It's not a good combo. I don't recommend it. It was an era when I was a lot younger than I am now. You learn from your mistakes, John.
Absolutely. But occasionally you'll be like, maybe I should revisit that idea and try it again. Don't. Yeah, you should never go back to it.
Sorry, I'm gonna have to shoot off now. I'm afraid. Yeah, I pushed it.
Thanks for hanging out.
Yeah. Thanks, Elliot. Have a great weekend.
No problem. Yeah, nice to talk to you. I'll see you again.
Thanks so much. Cheers. Your brand is a part of a much larger organization, and a lot of those other brands sort of feel like they follow the model of most of Scotch, right? It's very very traditional in their concept. Do you guys feel like the black sheep of the family, being in this organization with these much larger, or not much larger, but this much larger organization with these other very traditional looking brands?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. one of the other brands I look after is Tamdhu from Speyside. So we very much associate Tamdhu with sherry matured whiskey, history, heritage, provenance, and I love all of that too. So I never mix up Tamdhu with Smokehead because it's so different in the way we've positioned the brands. I'm a great fan of Scotch whiskey as a whole. I love the history and the heritage and the provenance myself, and we're really looking to turn that on its head really with Smokehead. I mean, we're not looking in any way to undermine single malt or undermine its great history and heritage. What we're really trying to do is just say, look, let's maybe look at Islay whiskey at single malt through a slightly different lens, because we really felt that's the way that some consumers would prefer to look at single malt and prefer to enter into single malt whiskey. And that's really what we're trying to do here, is really celebrate single malt and widen the audience, and hopefully bring in some younger people to whiskey as well. Because what we were worried about initially, John, was, as I said, love the history and the heritage, but we did have a bit of concern, it's less so now, but 15, 20 years ago, that there was that feeling of a bit of barrier to entry around single malt. Am I worthy, and do I really know how to drink it? Do I drink it straight? Am I meant to add ice? Am I meant to add water? And it seemed to sort of be putting people off trying Scotch, which just seemed to us, such a shame. And other spirits were obviously doing phenomenally well. The likes of vodka and other spirits that really had no rules. Drink it the way you like it, mix it should you want to. So in many ways, we thought, well, look, that audience are missing out on the opportunity of single malt, maybe because they just feel, I'm not quite sure what I'm doing here. So our job at Smokehead was really to say, look, let's just knock those barriers down. Just enjoy it for what it is. Great whiskey. You want to put water in it, ice in it. You want to put Coke in it. You want to put it in a cocktail. It's your drink. If you enjoy it that way, you go for it. So we wanted to bring a bit more approachability and informality to whiskey, but at the same time maintaining the great quality that that's always there with single malt.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. Without disruptors like Smokehead, whiskey can become a monoculture real fast.
Yeah,
where we all sort of look the same, and everybody ends up looking like me, a middle-aged white guy sitting in a leather chair with a whiskey tumbler, telling you how you should only drink neat, and nothing should be farther from the truth. That's not how everything should be set up. But that's sort of what happens, right? But it feels like you guys are being a disruptor in the marketplace in a positive way, right? Because disruptors can go two different directions, and challenging that mentality that everything should be one way. And you do feature a lot of cocktails in a lot of your marketing, and so maybe what do you have a favorite cocktail that you would use Smokehead in?
To be honest, my favorite is probably just a simple smoke and Coke. A simple Smokehead and cola. Fill it up, put a lot of ice in there, and then add a wedge of lemon, lime, or orange. I think that's a really, really easy drink to make, obviously, and really refreshing to drink. Similarly, put in some ginger ale, put in some ginger beer. You'll get a similar effect. Thereafter, we've got, as you rightly said, John, so many different cocktails that we've played around with. It's just really fun to see what other flavors work with Smokehead and just be really innovative. So we've got one that's sort of play on a Negroni, which, I'm quite a fan of the Negroni, obviously, with the gin in it, but you flip it around to put a bit of Smokehead in it. It's quite a nice twist, something a bit different. So, but really, we're constantly being bombarded by our Smokehead consumer who's coming back to us saying, have you tried it with this? Have you tried it with that? And as you and I were discussing earlier on, John, I mean, it's not just mixing the liquid as well. I mean, a lot of what we do with Smokehead too is we're trying to match with different foods. You were talking about the barbecuing tradition and so on. And for a smoky whiskey like Smokehead, it's just a perfect marriage, perfect partnership. So again, we've done quite a bit around that, barbecuing, outdoor cooking, and so on. Burgers, steaks, you name it. We're really, for us, it's all about having fun. Whiskey should be about, really about having fun. I mean, ultimately, we know a lot of people collect whiskey, and so do I, and I fully understand that. But ultimately, hopefully, most people open their bottles of whiskey because, it's there to be enjoyed by, a group of people. And it's a way of people enjoying each other's company, and the whiskey hopefully just helps do that. It liberates good times, as we say.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that is really the reason why I even focus on whiskey at all, is because it's very much a communal spirit, and
Yeah,
I like that you tied to food, because I did have this question before you ever even tied it to food. But Burns Night is coming up, right?
Yeah.
So what should I be pairing my Smokehead with for my Burns Night meal?
Oh wow, there's a good one. Well, I mean, yeah, in the traditional haggis, you've got quite a bit of spiciness in there. It's robust. So I think you couldn't go far wrong with the high voltage. But you might even want to put the high voltage into a cocktail, and a spicy cocktail, and really go for it. What else would I recommend with my haggis? We've got a finish in our portfolio, which is a mocha stout finish. We have quite a craft beer following as well, and so we've created this mocha stout finish Smokehead, and there's quite a lot of nice chocolatiness on the finish and so on. And I think actually that might work quite nicely with the haggis as well, just on the finish, or maybe after the haggis, if you move on to another really traditional Scottish dessert called Cranachan, cream. You've got raspberries in there, you've got oats and so on. Then certainly, I think the twisted stout could sit really nicely with that. So yeah, those probably be a couple of my recommendations, John.
That sounds fantastic. And beer does partner well with whiskey on a regular basis, because beer's just whiskey that hasn't grown up yet. It hasn't gone through the appropriate stages to get there. And I appreciate non-hopped beer as well. So it's I say that a little bit in jest.
Yeah.
I'm quickly approaching the end of my time. I guess if I'm in the United States and I want to buy Smokehead, what are my opportunities that are not retail? Are there any online opportunities? Because I'm in a geographically remote area. So where can I get some Smokehead for my shelf?
That's a great question. I mean, first and foremost, I would always recommend Total Wine and More. Total Wine and More are really a great partner of ours right across North America. So I think that would be my first port of call for Smokehead. There are a lot of other fantastic specialist retailers that you should be able to find Smokehead in as well. But certainly, our friends at Total Wine and More have been really, really supportive of the brand. So I'd like to think you'll find it in all their stores across the US. And if they can get that to you via online as well, then obviously that's great too.
Yeah, and I want to thank you again. I've appreciated the time to taste through some of the things that you guys have offered, and you're very, very well priced disruptor in the Scotch marketplace, and I think that's one of the things that makes it the most interesting for me, especially as I'm a new Scotch consumer, is that I don't have to beg the question of, is this smoky or not? It's literally in the name.
Yeah.
The branding doesn't put me in a place where I need to, is this an old brand? Is this a new brand? Is this, whatever. This is just straightforward. Here's some Scotch. It's got an edge to it based off of the branding, but it's also not cost prohibitive to the point to where I'm afraid that if I buy this, I'm not going to like it and I've wasted money. And so all of those things are appreciative. Now, by no means am I saying that it's cheap, because cheap has a different connotation. It's really just cost conscientious and fantastic. I'll give you a chance to kind of share any other, website details or anything else you want, and then we'll call it.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, as I say, I mean, if you want to learn more about or find out more about Smokehead, www.smokehead.com. Please come onto our site. Have a look round. As you were saying, John, have a look at all the cocktails, the range that we do. Also, please join our database. Become a Smokehead. You're then very much first in line when it comes to any new releases, all the information that we provide around the brand. And as I said, for everybody in North America, yeah, please, if you're in Total Wine and More or another retailer that's selling Smokehead, as you said, John, please do try it. We're trying to put it at a price that's approachable. I think you will not be let down. It really does what it says on the bottle, and there's a lot of quality in that liquid. So hopefully everybody will enjoy it and enjoy it the way you like it. As I said, that might be straight, might be with ice, with water, or in an amazing cocktail. And if you come up with something we haven't, please social media us. Send it via Facebook, Instagram. Let's see what you got.
Yeah, and I'll echo the sentiment as a non-Scotch aficionado. This is a really, really good offering. It's positioned very, very well in the marketplace, and I've talked to some folks who are Scotch aficionados, and they're in the same place as well. They love the branding, but more importantly, they love the whiskey that's inside the bottle as well. So, thank you for taking some time this afternoon. I always appreciate the time you guys offer.
It's a real pleasure, John. No, thank you so much for the opportunity and for the support. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to this offering from the EmbellishPod. If you enjoyed this, please leave a review on whatever platform that you're consuming this on. Leave a comment if possible. Hit me up on social media at TikTok or Instagram using EmbellishPod. Give me a follow so you can keep up with what's going on here. I can also be found at www.embellishpod.com. All of my links, accounts, contact details, and so forth are there. Thanks for stopping by.